Why I don't invest in international markets. All right, so this is a pet peeve of mine. There's many pet peeves, obviously, but this is a big one. You have to be international for diversification. Based on what? Literally, based on what exactly? What is the MSCI, Morgan Stanley Capital International? Is that what I always forget what the C stands for. Not all world, but all world X US. How long does that go back for? 40, maybe 50 years? We literally have a 50-year time frame of international markets. That's it. Now, I mean, I guess you could go back to the East Indian or East Indian, what's the thing in Britain? You know, the tulip craze and all that for international markets. I guess you could go back to there. If you really want to go back to capital, the East Indian, it's the East Indian Pale Ale, it's Pale Ale, Indian IPA, Indian Pale Ale, East Indian something, shipping company, all those shipping companies from the past. I guess you could go back there. You could go back to the coal mines of the past. You didn't invest in those. I didn't invest in those. No one did. You had to be, the bankers and the rich people, the dukes and whatnot. All right, but so that's not really part of modern era. It just is not. What else we got? So Japan was on its back after World War II. So Japan was, an emerging market for sure. They led the way with export, a mercantilist economy where export our way to prosperity, and it worked for a little bit, but it stopped. Singapore, that might be the new, the new saving grace of the markets. Who knows? But I mean, Singapore back in the 1950s was as poor as Cuba, right? And it's just actually Singapore is probably poorer than Cuba until when Bautista was the tyrant there. Then Castro took over, and Singapore has well dwarfed that of Cuba. All right, so I mean, at the end of the day, though, you would have invested in Cuba before you invested in Singapore, would you have not? Back in the 50s, sure. Before Castro took over, sure you would have. You would have invested in, let's see, Cuba probably before you invested in Japan, not knowing what Japan was going to do. Taiwan, I love Taiwan and all, but again, they always have the threat of the communists at their beck and call there. South Korea, I mean, there is not enough time frame to say that there's any track record for these markets to do anything, to continue on. I mean, Venezuela was the bastion of wealth in Latin America, one of the richest countries on the planet. There's no growth in Venezuela. I mean, the list goes on and on, this stuff, man. So international markets, all right? What is the track record of these? Well, there isn't any, because Japan, all these firms, again, you could say European, maybe. If you want to, but what did European stocks do during, the 30s and 40s? I don't know, but if it wasn't for the Marshall Plan, who knows where the European stocks would be, the European continent as a whole? I don't know. But at least in terms of everything else, there's basically a 50-year time frame, the post-World War II. And you can say, well, emerging markets, they have ups and, they way ups and way downs. That's not investing, that's speculating. Because you're speculating that one of these countries is going to essentially become the next Japan or the next United States. And then if you look at the last 20, 30 years of Japan, there's no growth there, none whatsoever. I don't know what the South Korean markets have done. I don't know. Israel maybe, but Israel's a quasi-socialist anyway. And again, relying on us, and as we retreat from the world affairs, as rightly we should, what are these other countries going to do? Because they've been Germany, for heaven's sake, relying on us to provide them defense for all these years without having to pay their own. I'm telling you, man. You got to make an argument that emerging markets or even developed international markets are here to stay. And I don't know if you can make that argument. I just don't think you can. You can't say, well, it's for diversification. Well, hell, man, we don't have that much of a track record to say there's any kind of diversification that's stuck. We just have post-World War II. what Eric Weinstein would call the great sleep of the post-World War II. We've basically been sleeping for the last 4 decades or so, thinking this is the way it's got to be, when history shows us this is the exception, not the rule. So that's why I don't invest in international markets. Way too much risk. Way too much risk. Can some people get a return? Sure. Will it be me? No. I'm not risking that stuff on, pink unicorns. It's just not going to happen in terms of, well, look, Josh, in the last 40 years, the international markets, That's just not enough time frame. There's not enough track record to say this is going to happen going forward. I'm just telling you. Look, you can bet. I get it. If people want to, I got no qualm with that. I'm not touching a 10-foot pole. I'll rely on the U.S. corporations, publicly traded, to be my international exposure, and hope for the best. And if I happen to miss a couple of years of Malaysian stocks, well, something tells me Malaysia and all these other countries are one revolution away from abandoning capitalism, if they're even capitalistic. I don't know. So I don't think it's worth the risk. All right, we'll see you.